podcast you cheer for. Sneaker, business, talk. It's the Soul Material Podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast you cheer for. I'm the OGEO.
All right, it's T-Mark the Street Shark.
And we are here once again for some sneaker business talk, clarity over popularity. Thank you again for joining the podcast you cheer for. And in typical OG and Shark status, we're going to pay homage now to a childhood just thing that we just enjoyed, loved, took full advantage of into our college years. So long farewell to Eastbay. And we are here to take a few minutes just to, of course, have some story time and educate you all on the significance of Eastbay and put you on to some things that they did that was forward thinking, if not revolutionary in many ways, that we even do today as far as how social media and the internet and technology has evolved. But for the most part, Shark, you want to start off, man, because I feel like shedding a tear because I immediately was thinking of that mail coming every 2 weeks and you going running that mailbox to get that catalog, man, but not to spill too many beans, man. But I just think back and I'm just like, wow, again, what a time to be alive.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that have happened in our timeline that, you know, you enjoyed it in the moment. And then now you look back and looking back because it's just like it's over, you know, because it's just like, but your memories aren't over. So that's why we're here. We're the podcast you cheer for, because we want to keep that nostalgia alive. And then if you didn't know, if you were in real time, because you might have seen different iterations of Eastbay, you know, because they didn't just start online. So we'll just do some snapshots. But for who they were, you know, just wow, what an epic run for that type of retailer to hit so many people and go like direct to consumer that way, when that at that time, you know, in early 90s, it was, you had to go to the stores, you know, because there's no internet. So you had to go to the stores. But for sporting goods and our youth demographic being communicated with and targeted to the, especially, you know, the sports athlete lifestyle, like that customer that didn't shop at the sporting goods stores. I'm just like, I'd love, and as an adult that does a lot of business, marketing, acquisition, I'd love to go back and just see the paperwork on how they, you know, segmented the audience to actually get direct mail catalogs for this market into those people's hands, right? Because, you know, our older siblings, parents, and a few generations before us, like, you evolved from this department store to shops, you know, like that transition. And then like with department stores, you had big fat, you know, Macy's, JCPenney's catalogs that just had everything. Sears, you know, you could Christmas shop out of the Sears catalog, you know. But and then, you know, there was every category for the household for every person in the household, right? But then Eastbay, came about, and to be honest with you, for me, it was around middle schoolish where I discovered it. So it had just like happened. So that's like early 90s, you know, 92, 3-ish, somewhere around there. And, you know, this is around the origins of Slam magazine. They're so near the beginning around that time where you were able to read about it in your language. You know, you saw images and the way that it was presented, it resonated with a larger demographic that it was like, if you know, you know. So, because I believe if you were a football player, if you were a baseball player, like but you had an element of the know, you were that was the thread that went through all of the type of consumers, right? Because the way that they pictured the athletes, and then you get the cartoons on the catalogs and everything like that, because it was seasonal, like you had mentioned, bi-weekly, and it was just brought up one just to go the anticipation of getting it in the mail, and then you were literally reading about the stuff, you know what I mean? So I got to, for me being someone who's very into the details from a very young age, it was educational because I learned the name of the shoe by reading the name first, not like hearing about it and then nicknames and all this other stuff. So you read the shoe, right? You read what the name of the shoe is. And then like, I'm actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if I'm surprised or not but the Eastbay did something that nobody ever like did again.
I was about to read my notes, Tony, and I ain't even got notes on this joint. I know you're about to go there.
They put the weight of the shoe.
And not only that, but the integral details as far as synthetic leather yes. I'm talking about details for details.
They gave you the ingredients. Like that's the only place that they gave you the calorie count, how many, what we again, breaking down the materials, talking about how much a thing weighed in the ounces. And then, the way that they broke down the size and colorways, it was just such a, again, the way they presented it, you know what I mean? Because it wasn't your square, like shoe. Even the way that they spread the layout of the pages and laid their images and laid their the transitions between the blurbs of the picture of the athlete.
Not only that, Shark, but think about when they would layer the same shoe but the different colorways and how they would kind of structure like it was a mountain almost. Like that was, again, forward thinking, because again, you mentioned the Sears catalog, JCPenney's catalog. You would get your square, like you mentioned, and it would be the product, the price, and you would get the details. But again, a lot of magazines, you mentioned Slam, believe it or not, folks, a lot of things were taken or borrowed from Eastbay because it wasn't just the product. As you said, it was the stories. It seemed like at that time, it wasn't really a big deal who you were contracted with. So you may get one with Deion Sanders on the cover. And then the next time, you may get Rich Gannon or someone. The next time you may get, I'm saying this as an example, but you may get a Tiger Woods. And then it was just, again, the presentation was just so awesome. When it came in the mail, it wasn't like, Mom, I want this. It was almost like, I'm going to sit down and read this because it's appealing to the eye, it's educational, it's informal, and it was entertaining, like you said, Tony. It's just a catalog.
Yeah, it was a catalog, and then it turned into a wish list because I used to like circle the stuff that I wanted.
Here we go.
And then I would highlight things, and then if there was two shoes I wanted to know about the shoe. I wanted to know about the weight. But at that time, at that young age, I actually don't know the relativity of the weight, right? But now I got to read about it for the first time, and now I get to think about it differently. So I actually stood in the store and be like, this way, this and this Hirachi does it. Oh, it is way lighter than this, and like you don't even consume it that way. We just pick a shoe up off the shelf and then really pictures yourself using wearing them, or at that time it's just more ball first, because ball is life. and what you're going to do in it. So just factoring that in, it's just like, oh, I'm actually indirectly learning about performance elements and how it can literally translate to my game. So even the Reebok pumps, the first time I had a sprained ankle, and then it was just like, tie up the shoe tighter and pump it up, and you things were illustrated like that through Eastbay, because on that page you would see the D Brown, and again, when you resonated, and some of that stuff may have been regional, and then of course with the seasons of the sports, that's also why I alternated basically on what was going on at the time, and a lot of stuff was going on at the same time. So sometimes it's like the same products from the same like layover of the seasons, but it was just reordered in the magazine in the catalog that you got because of who was on the cover and how that was themed. So it was like, this and this, and then just even like the middle pages, because you had to like rip out like if you wanted to send a check, you could fill out some stuff, and like just going through that, again, like, and then it's younger, so you got to ask for the money, ask for the credit card, like even just getting on the phone, and talking to them, and then like doing a phone order, and putting in like you got to hand the phone off to the adult, or you gotta like, do you have permission? And then the fact that you would like talk to people on the phone, and they would like, let me look that up, and then just go through the inventory with you on the phone, right? Like, what about that? You got a 12? Oh, you only got 11. I don't know if I can do that. Oh, what about this? You got like, that was always part of the experience for me, and I mean, like, before I get into some like couple other things, because but tell them, OG, like that call, what was that call like for you?
It's interesting, Tony, because something came to mind when you mentioned that, was the reinforcement of what happened in the mid 90s and in our college years going to 98, 99. And that was going to a Foot Locker or a Champs and having that catalog in front of the register. So you got that reinforcement of seeing basically the same magazine once companies merged and so forth, and them ordering for you there on the spot, and that being advertised. But one thing, Tony, I have to share with the world is that
hold on, pause real quick, because I want to really illustrate what that meant for people. Like, so what the OG just said, because sold material. So we're gonna break down the layers real quick. You said that the catalog was in the store by the register, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know this because I was there, but I don't know if everybody's there. So let's just tell them real quick. That wasn't like just sitting up there like a magazine, like they used to sell them on the magazine shelf, whatever. Like, that's not what you're talking about, right? I'm talking about the binder.
There you go. Strongly encouraged right there.
Okay. It was really like a testament. It was like on a podium,
it
in
looked
a
like
binder that was laminated, and then you flip the page. Like, you felt like you was an employee. You felt like you was there. You was ordering from the.
From an African American household in 80s and 90s, it was the equivalent of going to grandma's house and having that huge Bible in the living room that you could not walk in unless it was Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter. And it was open to whatever her big scripture was. And that's exactly what it looked like walking through. So it looked like, hold up, what is this? So a lot of times, believe it or not, no matter what was on display, it looked so important. People going to the store, just flip through the pages to see what is this? And
so I think that deserved a moment. So go ahead.
Definitely. But what I wanted to share is that 7th and 8th grade, 92, 93, 93, 94, my locker in junior high school was quote unquote designed with cutouts from Eastbay magazine. So just to reinforce, it wasn't just a catalog, it was entertainment and education and so forth. So shoes that I wanted, or I was claiming I was going to get. I remember they had a Larry Johnson spread at that time. He was the first pick of the Charlotte Hornets. That was my favorite player. So I remember so outside of Beckett and Sports Illustrated, Eastbay was what I went to cut out stuff for my locker going to school. So open my locker, and more than half of the quote unquote posters of cutouts were from Eastbay. So man. And again, you get it every 2 weeks. And honestly, it was cool back then because we were kids getting something with your name on it.
Yeah, but check this out. Like, speaking of the locker, I will say not everyone was fortunate enough to get the package in the mail. So that locker, or hanging out by the lockers, what I'm referencing, and in between the classes and breaking it out in the back of the class under the desk or whatever, sharing it around. At least my experience was, I learned it from like one other person, but that person was so low key, no one even knew that they were really into it. I just knew them because they were into ball, and we used to hoop together. But other than that, but when for some reason when I had it, a lot of people, there was a lot of like, like Snoop Dogg, like, you ain't put in, when he bring out the gin and all the cups come, like, that's what that's how I remember it, because I don't know. I know who put me on, but I know I put a lot of people on, because I'm just like, y'all don't know about this? Like, this is like the greatest thing ever. It's like Santa Claus sends me a book to tell me what my options are, what I can get this year, because of the stat, and that's why I want to say, like, it's not even it became so communal to share the magazine when it came, and to me, like that's like viral. You know what I mean? And in its grassroots form, because that's still word of mouth, because you could like refer people like, yo, because that's how I started too, like, yo, can I get your tab where you rip the tab off so I can send mine, so I can fill it out, so I can start getting one, you know what I mean, like that type of like, because you could get the discount, they would print the codes on the back for the discounts, and that'll be like your code, and then like for me, I got a little selfish, middle school going to high school, because I was sharing, but I was sharing so much that like Bama's wasn't giving them back. You know what I mean? It was like, and then it was like I couldn't, like, you didn't give it back to how I gave it to you because it's all wrinkled up and everything. And then, like I said, I still wanted to write in it and take my notes and circle. So I smartened up, like one time, ordering one with my mom, giving me permission. And then like I was like, yeah, got an extra magazine, but put it in her name. So I'm like, I'm getting two. So now I got the throwaway one. I still got one at home. So I had to even be slick, because you know what I'm saying, like it wasn't treating, it was for the community. I try to help everybody out, but they're like the library, like just put the books back where you got them. We could all get along, you know what I mean? So I had to smarten up and protect my assets with the Eastbay. Like, that's how serious the Eastbay book was.
Seriously. And Tony, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing that I would be remiss if I did mention too was not only how things were presented, but the equality of the brands. So I vividly remember when the Grant Hills came out, the first ones, and the Grant Hills got the same love as, I remember the next page had some British Nikes, and then Black Top was hot. But then you got, Nike doing their thing with Griffin, with Bo. But the way things were presented, it was like equal opportunity, in which no matter who was who, it was almost like a newspaper saying, hey, this is your corner. This is their corner. This is his corner. That's their corner. Y'all all got 25%. And that was it. So to me, I just remember it not being too much politics of saying, wow, this magazine is 85% Nike, you know what I mean? Or 20% Adidas. No, what was going on was just, to me, again, evolutionary, because they brought so many things as far as just knowledge to shoes, period, that if you were, in Bach Life or in the Nikes, and then you had Etonics, you had so many brands, and it was just good at that time to just not feel like you were not popular or not popping, because particularly in the DC area, if you weren't wearing a certain shoe, because as long as it was clean, K-Swiss, you talk about Troops before, it was so many brands. And if they was in Eastbay, they presented in a way like, yo, I gotta have that, and the web wasn't like, yo, what are those? It's like, where you get those from? And then again, like you said, Tony, I got my catalog in the middle of my underarm, dog.
That's what I'm saying. And then like the adult businessman mind looks at this and says, like, everything that you just said, like they did what we've talked about. The athlete was first.
There you go. Okay.
And then it was about what the athlete was wearing and how they were wearing it and what they were doing, like, and how this enhances their performance. And, so, and again, we've lost that signature, in many categories of entertainment and sports and everything like that. But and then the brands become, because they want, like, no, but it's us, and look, this is who we are, because at that time it's athlete first, every brand. That's why it was so many, everyone having signatures, because it was cool like that. Because again, the equity of the presentation was more there, just because they wasn't like trying to beat each other up. They were just trying to compete with who they got, and then the players play, and then the rest of the stuff sells itself, because you got to win and keep being on TV for it to work. So in Eastbay, yeah, they help with that equity, definitely. And then there's, so then it was just like whatever was featured, and then again, it was more featured for its season and what was going on that was timely for whatever athlete. Because I can just think about, and there's just so many the imagery and the artwork. You guys, should know by now that I'm a collector of a lot of things out there for our audience of with toys and nostalgic just items from from the childhood, and a lot of those things, the box art is just so classic for each series, Master of the Universe, Ninja Turtles, all those things. Like when you see it, you know it from a distance. And it's the same thing to me. Eastbay covers. I want to.
I see that font. I see that yellow. I see
painting of the first the font, but then just the collage of every cover, like. And there's no like one that's favorite or whatever, but it's just still like I can just see the Santa Claus sneaking in the chimney with the sneakers falling out the set. So you know what I'm saying? And then, and then there's like the Barry Sanders, and then like again with the Deions, and more like the Ken Griffey, and there's so many different ones because they weren't just on the cover one dime. You know what I mean? They had multiple shoes, like, and then, and equally important was, again, it was like beginning, middle, and end, because you had little things that were grabbed your attention. And even on the back cover, again, for those that don't know, they would print coupons on there that would be exclusive to your account. So again, it just made you feel like you were somebody but it evolved because it got on the Eastbay onto online just to move the timeline, and more things got a little competitive with everyone being online, and then sharing distribution with that Footstar Inc. umbrella with Foot Locker, Champs, and the Layover, all those things having the same stuff. But Eastbay still managed to have their own stuff, especially their derivatives with Final Score, because that's where the backstore. So they had a whole separate website. But guess what? That started off as a separate magazine and catalog too.
Final Score.
That was like some elite stuff. If you even knew how to get to that one too later when it started, and then you're like, wait a second, now I got this super yellow catalog coming where it's called Final Score, and then that means that's like all final sizes or back stock or super liquidated sale stuff, and then they put that in its own magazine and send it to you. Man, and he'd be like, how that make it over here? And then now, and then you got to call and talk with the phone again. And
there you go.
So what sizes is here? What about this? So those things. And then they had another one for team stuff too. If you actually, anybody used the team stuff, even though it was baked into usually the middle of all the magazines, the team stuff, or but yeah, because you could customize stuff but it was even the thought. Like I remember a youth league team one year, the coach, I guess he decided to use Eastbay, and I just thought it was cool that year I wore a jersey that was printed by Eastbay. I was like, ooh, that I know what that is. So just little things like that was like so important. But moving to the online, that phone experience changed over time, especially when sneakers got popular. But you could still call Foot Locker. You could see again. Yeah, I don't know if you know, but again, even when you were online, like there was a time where you could like wait on. You were trying to get online, but you were still on hold on the phone at Eastbay, and you might be on multiple phones on hold somewhere. And Eastbay was one of those.
There you go.
And many times they answered on the other end, and I was thankful because I sure enough sat there and listening to that elevator music. And then sometimes just because it was cool because it was sports, it wasn't always elevator music. It might be like the
Nevada or somebody,
or something. You know what I'm saying? Or then like a clip from a sporting event, and then hit you with some alternative in between that's like semi-relevant. You know what I mean? So like that goes back to I think they knew who their customers were, and they were going to hang on to that line. So
it's cool you say that, Tony, because they knew who their customers were, but they were the staple, and dare I say, they created an arena and a space for their consumer. And in a legacy standpoint, Tony, I want to say this to the audience. If you're our age, this is, we're preaching to the choir, but you have to understand how weird and odd it was during this time. I'm talking about when they started the direct mail in 1990, for you to get, as Shark said, a few minutes ago, this kind of stuff in the mail. Our era, our generation was you throw on something to go get something. So you get dressed to go to Athlete's Foot or to PG Plaza or to Foot Locker. The only people that were getting stuff in the mail was grandma or mom getting their porcelain, dishes, or maybe something from Finger Hut or something like that. So it was bizarre at some point for you to be an athlete, for you to like shoes, for you to like apparel that we are like now, and getting it in the mail. It was like, what? And they totally broke that mold until now. What are we doing ourselves as sole proprietors or whatever you want to call us out here? Everyone's a seller online, everyone. So I give them the legacy of breaking that mold in our culture. Say it was cool for you to get a tennis shoe or a t-shirt in the mail, and not just go to a brick and mortar and spend your gas and so forth. So they are legendary for that. And that's what I'll remember them for, because before them, something coming in the mail was definitely for mom or for grandma, definitely.
Yeah. And there's someone who always like being an individual. You still loved access to stuff that not everyone had, that you still couldn't see in the stores. Right. And then it's just like, it's a trust factor, because it's just like, I know what I'm doing. I'm calling the right guy. I'm calling Eastbay. They got me, because there were other things that tried to sell you jerseys and this, and I might have tried to get a jersey and then it sent a check and it never showed up. But Eastbay was right there. I just love seeing that palette of college basketball jerseys and warm-up tops, that would be spread. And then they got the authentic, and then they got the replicas. They lined it all up for you. Same thing with the football and basketball jerseys. And then they helped us out with the swingman era, the first version of the swingman era, and then everything else in between. So I just commend them for their longevity and the customer service. And it was like they're in like Wisconsin, so it's just like this. They're not even in a big city, and so it's like, it's almost some like mythological, like they're just in the Midwest and nowhere land, and but all of these shoes, it's like the North Pole. Like, is the North Pole Eastbay's headquarters or something? Like everything just gets shipped out from everywhere. So just loving what they've done. And in the latter years, I think that everyone had already forgot about them. That's why some things phased out as well, because I've gotten plenty of deals on their sites over the last couple of years, and we try to tell you through all the acquisition as well about their 40, 50, 60% off sales that they have on top of the things. Checking the Final Score websites as well, just to get those last couple Jordans or LeBrons that you weren't even thinking about, like, how did this make here? Or like, how did these KD All-Stars make it here? But they were, and you just had to be there. But it was just always great that Eastbay was there for us, because they showed up, they were consistent. They just dropped, hits after hits, and it was just a staple in your life, and in your circle, and how you interacted with people, because then it's just like, you have the answer to the question, where'd you get those?
Understood. And unlike today, people don't understand that all you saying phone order. My success rate with Eastbay, even with Final Score, when they were advertising in the magazine, we only have an 8.5, a 10, 11, and 12 left. I would say it was between 85 to 90%, which is crazy when you say something's coming in the mail. It's already been printed. It's a delay of you getting it in the mail. And then I call and they only have a limited size that they printed in the magazine. And I call and they still have that size available, 85 to 90%. So that's what I remember Eastbay for too. And Final Score is that I got to be plus an A-, going through them and calling during a very significant time in my life where shoes were just everything. And the cheapest I can get them was the better. That means I can get more. So I'm like you, Shark. I was like, oh, these only $50. Oh, I got $100 left. I can go get these now. So that was always that game. And Eastbay helped me out with the addiction, if you will, and turned it into a collection.
Oh yeah. I think that's what introduced my whole household to what was never going to go away. Was the love of Eastbay, and you just sat back and thumbed through the magazines, wished, that might have been the first part of manifesting, because then it's just like, hey, I want this, and then now I gotta do a chore here. This is how much it costs, like these are ethics that are being installed through, things that you're interested and passionate about. So just wanted to pass on that nostalgia to our audience. Say salute to Eastbay, as they have now officially shut down their operation. Everything is fully liquidated. If you see anything on their site right there, get it before it's gone. And to that, it's just like, sorry, I feel like can we get one of those moments where it's like the last episode of Martin or the Fresh Prince or whatever, where you just sign the wall and turn off the lights, good night, Eastbay.
Well, Eastbay, rest in paradise. And thank you for being a part of a wonderful time in my childhood and teenage years, because it would not have been the same without you. So Eastbay, salute.
All right. There we go. Signing off for the podcast you cheer for. So Soul Material, another one in the books.
Yes, sir. Until next time, I'm the OGEO.
All right. It's T-Mark the Street Shark. See you when we see you.
Peace to you.